I'd like to go ahead and call to order this meeting of the City of Leavenworth Planning Commission. We do have a quorum. Planning commissioners have received the minutes from the June 4th meeting. Are there any corrections or additions to be made to those minutes? Okay, if not, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I motion to approve the minutes.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Item number 1, and this is a public hearing, is 2018-11 rezoning 600 Shawnee Street and 621 Seneca Street. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you said, this is a rezoning for 600 Shawnee Street and 621 Seneca Street from Central Business District and R16 single high-density single-family residential to RMX mixed-use residential district. Property located at 600 Shawnee is the former Immaculata High School property, and then the 621 Seneca is the vacant lot to the north of the school building, so that is all being considered together as one property. The applicant is requesting the rezoning in order to develop the building into a mixed-use structure. It'll be primarily residential apartment units. There's a proposed total of 38 apartment units. That'd be 37 one-bedroom units and 1 two-bedroom units. And then there will also be some commercial space provided in the former gymnasium portion of the building. The residential units are all proposed in the classroom portion of the building to the east, if you're all familiar with that. The property is listed on the National Historic Register of Properties as part of the Leavenworth Downtown Historic District. That was registered in 2002. Property was constructed in 1922. As part of that registry, the Leavenworth Preservation Commission did review this project at a meeting and voted to recommend approval of it. The proposed uses, the commercial and the residential, the mixed use are allowable within the central business zoning district. However, the CBD district restricts the use of residential on the first floor of a property to either it has to be residential cannot be in the front half or front 30 feet of a property, with whichever is more. And the applicant is proposing to have the entire first floor of the school portion of the building to be residential. So that's the reason for the rezoning request. If it weren't for that provision, they would not need to rezone the property in order to have this use in that building. So on site, there are a total of 26 spaces provided. Let me bring up the site plan here. Just to orient you, here's the building, and here is the vacant lot. So they are proposing some spaces here along the alley, and then to the back of the building, they will be putting up some spaces too. So that'll be 26 spaces on site. There are an additional 35 on-street spaces along 6th and Shawnee Streets. And then there are 34 more spaces in the adjacent city-owned public lot to the north of the building. The required parking for the project would be 108 spaces total based on the breakdown of apartment units and commercial space. The development regulations do allow for a reduction in that required on-site parking to be approved based on it being a mixed-use structure and being a historic structure. So that reduction in actual on-site parking spaces is allowed per the development regulations. The Development Review Committee did review this project at their July 26th meeting. The main area of discussion did focus on the required parking. The First Christian Church to the northeast of this property does pretty heavily use that public parking lot. And so I know there's some concern about those parking spaces being taken up by tenants of this project. So that was really the main focus of discussion at the Development Review Committee. But again, there is the allowed reduction in required parking, and so the project does meet those requirements. So just conditions of determination, whenever the planning commission takes action on an application for rezoning, there's some specific criteria that must be considered, so I'll just go through those. The character of the neighborhood. The subject property is part of the downtown Leavenworth and redevelopment overlay district with a variety of uses and building forms, and historic structures that have been repurposed are comprehensive area. The second is the zoning and use of nearby properties. Properties to the east, south, and west are zoned CBD, and the properties to the north are zoned R16, which is the high-density single-family. The next is the suitability of the subject property for the uses to which it has been restricted. And the subject property is currently zoned CBD, which allows a variety of uses by right, including the proposed use, just without the apartment units on the first floor of the property. Next is the extent to which removal of the restrictions will detrimentally affect nearby property. The proposed rezoning should have little to no detrimental effect on nearby property. There is a mix of uses present in the downtown area, including multifamily. Staff does not anticipate that the volume of traffic generated by the proposed uses will be significantly higher than the previously generated traffic by the high school that was in place at this building. The next is the length of time that the subject property has remained vacant and zoned, and the structure has been unoccupied since June of 2017 when Immaculata held their last class for that school year. The next is the relative gain to economic development, public health, safety, and welfare by the reduction in the value of the landowner's property as compared to the hardship imposed by such reduction upon the individual landowner. The proposed rezoning will have a positive effect on the economic vitality of downtown Leavenworth in terms of bringing more residents into the area, which will potentially increase the patronage of existing local businesses, as well as expanding the commercial offerings in the area. The recommendation of permanent staff does recommend approval of this application. Next is conformance of the requested change to the adopted comprehensive land use plan. The area is identified as appropriate for commercial uses in the comprehensive plan. That being said, majority of downtown is identified as commercial on the future land use plan. There is no mixed use designation. And so additionally, this area is part of the downtown North Leavenworth redevelopment area master plan, which promotes the area as appropriate for a mix of uses, including residential. And so based on that, staff does find it in conformance with the adopted comprehensive plan. Then the final is any other factors that may be relevant to a particular proposal. And then just would note that the proposal does make possible the adaptive reuse of an existing historic significant structure that has been vacant. So with that, if you have any questions, I can answer those, and the architect for the project is here to answer questions as well.
Any questions for the staff or the architect?
Julie, so to clarify, the lot 6, or the address is 621, the applicant owns that parcel, correct?
Yes, yep, the vacant, parcel.
Okay.
What about the one just to the east of that one, the one with the barn on it?
No, that's owned by a separate property owner.
And that's not not owned by the group that owns
No.
IMAC? Okay.
I have a question for the architect.
If you want to come up to the podium, please, and give us your name and address.
Yeah, hello, my name is John Clock with Exact Architects, representing the applicant and owner.
Would you please move the mic up so we can hear?
Is that better? Address is 3829 Main Street, Kansas City, Missouri, Unit 007.
Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Mr. Clock, on the lot there, the vacant lot where you're adding those parking spaces along the alley, what was the idea or the intent behind only adding spaces along the alley and not making a parking lot that would encompass that whole property?
There are several things. The site and grading allow for parking on that portion of the lot. They're also adjacent to the the building in new use. We didn't want to affect the site too much to the north in case of future development on that lot. If we were to create a new curb cut into the site, that would dictate how that site developed, and we weren't prepared to do that at this point. Also, I guess that, yeah.
Okay. A couple other questions related to that. One, you're also proposing a gym, a public gym or a membership gym of some kind in the old gymnasium.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on how to accommodate those clients in addition to the parking spaces that are needed for the residents? Where are they going to park when they come to go to the gym?
For large events or just
Just
the
individuals.
individuals?
Say you've got 20 people that want to come and use the gym. Where do they park if all the parking spaces are taken up by the residents?
The intent was to, in addition to the spots on site, to lease a portion of that parking lot on the northeast corner to provide the required parking spots. In the case of large events, we would, I think, utilize the parking on the streets and, I guess, neighboring parking lots for those type of events, similar to the way other businesses are doing it.
Sure. And then one more thing. So you touched on something. So you're working out a lease with the city or something on that public parking lot? Is that what you're referring to? Or how are you, you're including the public parking lot as part of your count? Is that right? Am I missing something?
I think that had been discussed by the applicant, their desire to lease part of that parking lot. And speaking with the city manager, that request would need to go through the city commission. I'm not sure that there's a lot of desire to do that, to lease out the public lots for private uses. So, in just working through it, and staff looking at this, there are a number of public lots in downtown. And so it was our thinking that any commercial users of this would just park in the same manner that any other commercial customers in downtown park, either on street or another public lot. And in areas like this, the intent not is really to get someone right to the front door. You may have to walk a block or two, which is sort of, expected in a downtown area like this. And so that was really the thinking on the commercial uses for this particular site from our end.
Okay. So have you visited with the church and the city on how you're going to orchestrate all of this on Sunday mornings? Because I can see where, we have all this parking on the street, but as a resident, I'm going to want to park in that lot because it's safer and my car is going to be safer. But then I want to sleep in on Sunday morning or go to church Saturday night. And so all those people with mobility challenges who come to church on Sunday morning aren't going to have a place to park easily accessible to the church. So I'm kind of wondering how that's the dynamics of that are going to work out so that everybody gets what they need.
We have not reached out directly to the church, but would be willing to work with them on a partial dedication of some of that for Sundays from 9 to 1 or whatever it is. I think that we're open to that, and I think that make that work. Everybody come together and make that work.
All right.
I think we're open to that.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman. Unless someone else has
Any
something.
other questions for Mr.
I have a question, but it may not be within your realm, Mr. Clark, as the architect of this, is with this renovation of these 38 apartments, I know 37 one bedroom, who was the intended scope or the tenants proposed for this, and what would be the rent range on this? I'm just curious of who's going to be living in this, of these 37 units, and a little demographics or profile of these people. Who are they that you're targeting for? Do you have that knowledge, or maybe someone else might have that if you don't have it as architect?
The rent rate, I can't speak to.
Okay.
But the clientele for the units, they're one bedroom,
Got it.
smaller efficiency units catered towards the military, young
Okay.
professional, and potentially some of the college students
Okay.
in the area.
What would be the range, since you said it to me, military, college, and I got that one. What would be the range that you're looking at for rental rate for that one-bedroom apartment? I'm just curious how that fits in with what I've seen in this town going on. What is anticipated rate that you're gonna charge for those?
I don't have that information for you. That would,
So there's no special housing issue going on with that for any different categories of people or people in need or like that? You know, if I'm saying that correct, you know what I'm saying? Set-asides or categories for rent of people in need. Military, college students, more middle to higher rate,
Yes.
you tell me.
market rate apartments, if that's what you're asking, they won't
Yeah,
be a
that's what I'm kinda
low-income housing or,
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clark. Okay, we're going to open up the public hearing at this time. If there's anybody who'd like to speak for or against the proposed rezoning, please come up to the podium. Please give us your name and address and
I'm the
direct all-
Reverend,
Excuse me, give us your name and address and direct your questions or comments to the committee. Thank you.
I am the Reverend John Emmanuel Sowers. I live at 418B Kickapoo Street, and I started as the pastor of First Christian Church on May 1st. Of course, I do have some legitimate concern about what that would mean for parking during Sunday, because that, of course, tends to be a popular time to be at First Christian Church. And I know sometimes people tend to sleep in on Sunday mornings, and I do worry about the parking, of course. But not only that, you have to know that our church is used 5 days a week during the school week because we have the Jack and Jill preschool, which is a portion of our school, and we have 90 students currently enrolled in the Jack and Jill preschool. And of course, there are teachers who park in some of the public spots and things. And so we would want to make allowances for the teachers to be able to park reasonably close. We have teachers that come early in the morning because the hours begin at 7 a.m., and that is sometimes dark. And you would want the teachers to be able to be relatively close to the door. Because the access is on the 6th Street side of the building. There's a keypad there, and that is the door that they enter by, and we would want to make sure that was safe for all parties. That's also a door where students and parents enter in, and you would want the parents to be able to park close. There is some pull-up in the alley, but the alley is not open year-round. It's only in the worst weather. So I do have some legitimate concern about parking, and I would want to take that into consideration. I was very curious what the parking would be because no one has reached out to us yet. So those are just some of the concerns that I have.
Thank you, Reverend.
I would like to make a comment on the last, if you don't mind, come back up here in case I want to ask something. You know what the Presbyterian Church is in town, right? The
Yes.
Presbyterian Church. And there was a major renovation of a historical building made into an apartment complex a few years ago. And the Presbyterian Church had to deal with this issue of the church is used not only on Saturday, Monday through Sunday, it's used for something.
Right.
And there's people there that have designated parking spots they put in there, but some of them were abusing that and parking in the church area. So the Presbyterian Church had to talk to some of those people. I think that point brought up about the architect or your people need to talk to them to work that out. The Presbyterian Church had to put up some signs. This is church parking.
Right.
And put some signs on some cars and said, please do not park here and be nice about it. But I think there's a little learning curve there for people not to take
Absolutely, and
advantage
I
of it.
think we're willing to work with all parties. One of
Right.
the legitimate concerns we have is due to the nature of our building, and we want to stay a downtown church because we think that is a vital anchor to the downtown. We have a very small parking lot towards the back where our annex building is, and then we bought a piece of property across the street some years ago, but we are a landlocked facility. And so that makes the legitimate concern. And, I was surprised when I began to hear of possibly leasing parking lots, because if there was an option to lease parking lots, I think the First Christian Church would like an option on leasing a parking lot. And we, if the city wants to go that direction, I think that's an interesting direction to go, but I think we'd want an option to see what the market would bear on leasing parking, because that is a legitimate concern for us. And so, like I say, we will, if we need to talk with developers and things, we will do that, but we would hope for your forbearance and your support as we figure out parking solutions.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak for or against the proposed rezoning? Sir.
My name is Donald Holman. I live at 1310 Vilas, Leavenworth, Kansas. I'm vice moderator of First Christian Church. My question is, if they are not going to develop lot 621 Seneca into parking, and they put in more housing, what's that going to do with the parking that's already convoluted already? I mean, it's going to be even squeezed more. Why can't they use, and I don't know what's the size of that lot?
Let's see. It is about a third of an acre.
How many square feet?
Um,
What's the dimensions of the property?
For your 200 square foot per parking space?
Now, it's probably more than that, Linda. What's the dimensions of the lot?
I don't have that. Let's see. About 127 by 112 or so.
Okay, so that's a little over, almost 11,000 square feet. And if it takes 200, but I think it takes more than 200 square feet for parking stall, because you have to have turnaround space, it'd be more like 250 to 3. When you take 300 square feet into 11,000, there's a bunch of parking stalls that they're giving up, and then if they put in extra housing, it's gonna make that tighter than it is now. And that's the only comment I have is, when I talked to the architect when we came before the, what is the committee we came before with?
The Preservation Commission.
Thank you, Preservation Committee. He said they were talking about putting in covered parking. Well, that would be a perfect place for them to put in the covered parking.
Hey, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Anybody else wish to speak for or against the proposed rezoning? Okay, at this point, I'm going to close the public hearing, and we'll open it up for the commission members. Any discussion?
Well, I will address the question about parking for churches. And it's not just First Christian Church that would be affected. There are several churches in that area, and the streets on Sunday morning are pretty much bumper to bumper with people parking on the streets already. The residential use is rather compatible as concerning parking when you're looking at as opposed to economic development, commercial uses, because residential use generally is evening and nighttime parking as a general rule, and that's daytime is when you're going to be needing it for businesses. And it is used a lot. The street parking there is used a lot. Personally, it's my opinion that when developers provide residential use in a central business district like that, that they should provide additional parking for residential uses. Most of the businesses that are downtown and that are in these small business districts like this are totally dependent on the street parking for their business. If people can't find a parking space pretty quickly and get in there, then they're just going to give up and go somewhere else. And we need to support our downtown businesses. I really do feel that the development of that lot at 621 into a parking lot would be very beneficial for this use, and that it would be beneficial for the neighborhood, both economically and and for the residential uses. It just makes good common sense.
I would just just add on to what my fellow commissioner said, and I think that public parking lot shouldn't even be part of the discussion in this case, because the church needs it, other uses in the neighborhood need that parking lot, and once that becomes an option for the residents, they're gonna dominate it, is my feeling, and they have an opportunity to have their own dedicated parking lot, private parking lot there at 621. It should require most of their needs, and they can still have a safe off-street parking area, and still allow people who need to get to the church and other areas much more access.
I kind of look at this, if you don't mind, as a greater good issue, is that we got a IMAC school that's been in there forever, very unique, strategic location, and the parking issue is a real issue, but I also see that tenants in that location can be also a help to small businesses, and people who live there can walk in the downtown area, and that would be good for small businesses. But there's a real issue there, as other commissioners bring it up about parking. There's kind of a trade-off on that. So, but it's great to do something with an old building like that instead of leaving it, vacant. And then we have to worry about crime or other things that could go wrong with that site and location. So it's good to have that used for tax purposes and a greater good than we're leaving it alone. We gain more, I think, but valid issue with the church, I hear that one, and the parking certainly has to be addressed, and some coordination to make that kind of a win-win for both parties.
I agree on that. I think hopefully there can be something worked out. Maybe the city can get involved. I don't know if on the city public parking lots, if there can be restrictions on overnight parking or not, or, but I don't think that's our issue right now.
Right.
That's a public parking lot. The fact that the church has used it for years is great, but that doesn't give the church right to direct who can and cannot park in that parking lot.
That's correct.
And as far as the other piece of property to the north there, once again, that's the owners, somebody owns that, they'll do with it what they want to based on the regulations of the city. We can, if we really think it's an issue, we can say we're not going to recommend approval of this because we think there's a parking issue. We cannot say, we're not going to recommend approval of this because you're not making a parking lot out of that additional land. So I kind of agree that I think the parking should be worked out, but I don't think it should be I don't think it should be something that impacts our decision on this particular rezoning. If the city ordinances and the development regulations say that there is adequate parking there for what is being done, then, I think that we should go along with what those regulations are telling us, as opposed to trying to say, well, we can put one here, one here, one there, and have these two just dedicated for the church, because we can't do that with the public parking lot. So. But I do agree that it appears to be, I hope it can be filled. There seems to be very shortly, I think we're going to have an excess of housing downtown, but I think it's a good use of the property. It's certainly better than it being left empty, which it has been for, I guess, over a year now.
If I could clarify, Mr. Chairman, it's just, I think this developer has done some wonderful projects downtown over the years, and I'm behind him 110% for the concept. I just think they've kind of dropped the ball on this one in thinking about the greater good of the community and the possibilities they have to be a good neighbor.
You can, in your motion, whatever that would be, attach stipulations. So for instance, you could make a motion to recommend approval with the condition that an additional X number of parking spaces would be added on the lot at 621 Seneca. That is an option for you as well. It doesn't have to be this or nothing.
Is it legal for us to make a condition on a rezoning?
Yes, you can make conditions.
The only thing I would say, if we want to do that, or if we're going to make a motion on that, then I think basically we just need to be making a motion to table this. I'm not gonna get us involved in trying to sort out how many parking spots should be in that area, if that's what somebody thinks we should be doing. So it should be tabled and go back to the development committee, if that's what we want to do.
And that's an option to give direction to the applicant and staff to go back, and work on looking at some additional parking and come back with a revised proposal for the planning commission to consider.
Could we make it as general as adding a stipulation that the applicant maximize the amount of parking available on their private property, which would include that lot?
I don't think so. I don't think the applicant, their current plan doesn't have that as a parking lot.
Right.
I think you'd probably be better
Yes, I wonder where
tabling
the-
it, as Chairman Byrd suggested, and having the applicant, see what they're comfortable with adding, have the Development Review Committee take a look at it again, and then bring back another proposal, maybe have the applicant work up a few different options, that the Planning Commission could take a look at.
One thing you did mention in the staff report was there are 6 public parking areas, public parking lots within a few blocks of this area. Can you show us where those are at?
Yep. Let it catch up here. Okay, so we've got the one, in question there at the corner.
On 6th Street.
The one over right across the street from City Hall here at Fifth and Seneca. Back behind City Hall, there are 2 separate lots. There's a lot on Shawnee between Fifth and Sixth, and then there is a lot down at Sixth and Cherokee. And there's actually another one over here, on Cherokee between Fourth and Fifth. So there's a number of lots, public lots around within a couple block radius.
I know the architect is here, we know that, but it's also representing them a person here with authority to speak to that issue of agreeing to that as a condition beside the architect, who has an authority besides you as Mr. Clark, can I go back to him asking a question? If you are the architect here, who else is principal owner of this location representing you, I mean, a higher authority or whatever? Are they here besides the architect? Evidently not. Okay.
Yeah, we just have the architect here.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you.
So yeah, I would strongly suggest that you would have, us table it, get some more options put together for parking, and bring it back, something else to look at, instead of moving forward a recommendation with some conditions to the city commission, since they will be the ones ultimately, voting on this with your recommendation.
Anything else? Okay, if not, does somebody like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we table the discussion so that the developer can have more time to come up with some viable parking options, alternatives. Does that work?
Is that valid?
Yes, table it to a future planning commission. There you go.
And we want to table it until the next meeting?
Should we let them decide?
Yeah, we don't need to attach
Okay.
a date to it, kind of give the applicant and staff some time to work together, and we'll get it back to you as soon as we can.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed? Unanimous. The motion or the rezoning request is tabled. The second item is 218-16 SUB, West Glen, second plat, final plat. Staff report, please.
Well, let me get my map caught up with me here, just a minute. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you said, this is a request for final plat for West Glen second plat. The property is owned by JMK Partners, and this is a request for approval of a 52 lot subdivision, the final plat for the West Glen residential development. Property is currently vacant and zoned R16, high density single family. A preliminary plat for the property was approved by the Planning Commission in June of 2017. It was under the name of Wolf Farms at that time. And the first final plat for the subdivision was approved by the Planning Commission in September of 2017. The second plat will complete the entire subdivision. There are a total of 101 lots in this subdivision. The first phase is currently under construction. With streets are in, and they are getting some houses up right now. Property is 11.1 acres. It lies along New Lawrence Road, directly east of 20th Street. So again, there are 52 residential lots. Lots 72 through 101 are intended to be standard single-family homes, and those are the lots more on the north end of the subdivision. And then lots 50 through 71 are intended to be smaller, maintenance-provided single-family homes with a smaller average lot size, and that is in line with the design of the first final plat that was approved, so keeping with the overall theme of the development. Improvements to New Lawrence Road were required as part of the development of this property and are currently underway, as I'm sure you are aware. So staff does recommend approval of West Glen second plat. I can approve any questions you might have, and the developer is here as well.
Any questions for the staff or the developer?
How large is this property?
It's a little over 11 acres.
I'm sorry?
A little over 11 acres.
11 acres.
Julie, what's the, just kind of get me up to speed if I missed something. As far as the new Lawrence Road improvements, are they only going from 20th Street up to this development, or are they going to go all the way down to the soccer fields down by Warren Middle School?
Mr. Riley could probably answer exactly where they're stopping, but I believe they're stopping just a little bit north of this development on New Lawrence.
Correct, basically just the north end of our property line.
Yeah.
Okay, so to clarify then, Mr. Riley, your organization is doing those improvements on the street? I
It
mean,
was
the city's
actually
not-
city project,
Okay, the city has no plans right now to go from your property to Warren?
correct.
Okay. And then as far as improvements at 20th and Eisenhower, because of the added traffic, is the city planning on doing anything there yet to improve that intersection, lights or anything? on the road?
I believe that's still being hashed out with the county. I can't quite keep track of where that process is, but something will be happening there. I believe the plan is a light. Right. Yes.
Now, is this a public hearing?
No, it's not.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Riley? Thank you. Any discussion among the commission? Our options with this plat are to approve it, to deny it, or to table it. I'll take a motion at this time.
This is a rezoning request, right?
No, this is just a final plat.
I must be looking at the wrong.
We have a rezoning after this for a different area.
Turned too many pages, I'm sorry.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the final plat
We have a
for West
motion.
Glen Plat 2.
We have a motion to approve the final plat. Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed? Unanimous. Item number 3 is 2018-17 rezoning West Glen. Staff report, please.
Okay, this is a rezone request for a portion of the West Glen subdivision. We are just talking about the area that was platted as Lot A on the preliminary plat. It is just this lot right off of 20th Street directly east of the existing, open door, yes, the open door church. The request is to rezone this from R16 high-density single-family to planned unit development to allow for the development of a total of 5 structures. There will be 2 triplex structures and 3 duplex structures. Let me get up the site plan here. Yes, so these will be accessed off of a private street, a cul-de-sac coming directly off of 20th Street. There will be a total of 6 total units in the triplex structures and 6 units in the duplex structures, so a total of 12 individual living units. 3 separate lots are proposed right now. The intent is, should the rezoning be approved, they'll submit a plat to divide the property into the 3 separate lots. And then after those structures are built, they would file what is called a condo plat, basically separating off individual ownership of each of those units. So an owner would own the outside walls of whatever unit they were in, and then the land would stay in common ownership of the HOA, be maintenance provided. So the Development Review Committee did review this at their August 23rd meeting. There were no major issues identified. There were a few just minor technical issues that we would expect to be addressed when a plat comes in. Since this is a rezoning, I'll go through the conditions of determination again. The first is the character of the neighborhood. The subject property is currently vacant and directly adjacent to 20th Street. It is part of the larger West Glen single-family subdivision, which is currently under development. Properties to the north are developed with existing large lot single-family homes, and the property directly across the street, across 20th Street, is occupied by the Church of the Open Door. Next is the zoning and use of properties nearby. Properties to the north and east are zoned R16. Property to the south is zoned General Business District, and properties to the west and further north are zoned R125, which is low-density single-family residential. Next is the suitability of the subject property for the uses to which it has been restricted. It is currently zoned R16, which allows for high-density single-family structures and a minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet with just 1 primary structure per lot. Next is the extent to which removal of the restrictions will detrimentally affect nearby property. The proposed rezoning should have little to no detrimental effect on surrounding properties. 20th Street is an existing major thoroughfare designed to handle traffic levels generated by the proposed use. And New Lawrence Road is again currently in the process of being improved and widened in order to accommodate increased traffic from this residential development. The length of time that the subject property has been vacant as zoned, the subject property has always been vacant. The next is the relative gains to economic development, public health, safety, and welfare by the reduction of the value of the landowner's property as compared to the hardship imposed by such reduction upon the individual landowner. The proposed rezoning will have a positive impact on economic development within the Leavenworth community by way of increased property tax base generated through the construction of new homes, and just development will provide for an increase in housing option types available to residents in town. The next is the recommendation of staff. Staff does recommend approval of this request. The next is the conformance to the requested change to the adopted comprehensive land use plan. The areas identified as appropriate for low-density residential, which is defined as 7,500 to 14,000 square foot per lot on the future land use plan. The property is 2.3 acres, which provides approximately 8,400 square feet per individual unit. So that does fall within that range on the comprehensive plan. And the final is other factors that may be relevant, and there are just no other factors of note. So with that, if you have any questions, I can answer those, and again, the developer is here as well.
Any questions for the staff or the developer?
Julie, a question, just to clarify for reference, is the entrance to the church there on the left side on that plan?
Yeah, you can
Right
see
there.
it, it's right here. So they are offset. when driveways can't exactly line up, we want them to be fairly offset, so there's no confusion with them being just a little bit offset. So they are, completely set off from each other.
Just from my perspective, it seems like they're still awful close,
They,
especially knowing the nature of the people going to church and, you know, people trying to get in and out of their homes.
Yeah.
And busy street.
Yeah, and according to that.
Any other questions for the staff or the developer? Okay, this is a public hearing, so we'll go ahead and open it at this time. Is there anybody who'd like to speak for or against the proposed rezoning? If you could go ahead and give your bona fides again, Mr. Riley.
Mike Riley, JMK Partner, 608 Delaware, Leavenworth, Kansas. Thank you for the time. Great question, Mr. Commissioner. We actually tried to line the driveways up. Unfortunately, there is a storm inlet directly across on our side of the curb from the church's access point. So we were not able to line those driveways up. We were able to push it the access point as far north as possible, but we are hindered by that gas line, that major gas line right there that Julie's pointing to that's going through the property at that angle. So we weren't able to push it any further. Again, we think this, for those of you who would like a reference point for size and number of units, this property is actually a little smaller when you compared the attached units that we did at Kensington, just off 20th and Limit. There were 12 units in there that were attached as well as a single family. This particular site is actually bigger than that particular site at Kensington, just the attached piece. So we felt, again, given the nature of where we see housing going, the lack of this type of housing in our area, we thought this was a good use for Lot A.
Do you see this as being rentals or owner occupied?
We see this as all owner occupied, just as Kensington is today.
Thank you.
Mr. Riley, just a question about the thought process. What was the idea of accessing off 20th Street and not tying into like Tallgrass Street or something on the other side?
Right. Great question. Again, we are dealing with Williams Pipeline, and unfortunately, they would only allow us one crossing of that particular easement along that area. So we couldn't cross their street again. We couldn't get the engineering to work out to where we could actually include Lot A without coming in off 20th Street.
here's that Lot A that we're
Right.
talking about.
We were just fighting, when you look at the grade, we were fighting grade an awful lot.
Any other questions for Mr. Riley? Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak for or against the proposed rezoning? Sir?
My name is David Sparks. I live at 4790 New Lawrence Road. Just, the only question that I have is just, is it gonna be rentals, Mike, or are they gonna be sold to individuals? Oh, okay. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sparks. I'm going to close the public hearing at this time. Discussion among the commissioners.
I guess I have some reservations about the access, but I mean, I realize that it's, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, but that whole New Lawrence Road, 20th Street, and another access right in that same triangle, I think it's gonna be troubles down the road, but I don't know how else to get around it.
But if they do put at Eisenhower and 20th a light, then that can
Yeah, but
slow
I'm
down
thinking,
traffic. You're thinking,
I'm thinking this intersection up here is gonna be a real nightmare in the future, especially as all these other agriculture areas develop,
Can you bring
potentially.
the proposed development plan up? How deep are the driveways gonna be? What are the setbacks proposed?
Let's see. Yeah, so there you can see, Mike, do you know off the top of your head how long the driveways are?
Obviously, they're staggered there.
Maybe they will in the future.
I think
Until after
the
somebody
smallest
raises several
setback we
times.
had was 30 feet.
They're not gonna be
I
proactive.
think again, going off the curb.
Yeah, and we've got, there's the 15.
You got the-
foot
you got the
joint
16
easement
foot right
there,
of way.
So,
And then from there, you're another 10 to 15 feet. So we're about 30 minimum from the curb up to about 40.
If you have enough room in there to park two cars,
You're gonna have to have it like that.
it's good.
Right.
But there's a development similar to this down in Tonganoxie, where the lots are quite small and the units are close to the street. There's really only enough room to park one car in there, but it works well because it's more geared toward retired people, things like that. And even though the thing is dense, it works well. Of course, they have provided some extra parking along it, so you might want to think about doing that, putting an extra parking space or two toward the end or in the middle somewhere, where, you know,
Right.
even though it's a one-bedroom unit or something like that, it could be a couple that's in there, and they might have two cars.
Right.
and Mike, these are 2-car with driveways, correct?
That's correct.
So 2 cars can park side by side in each of these driveways. Even if, on one of the shorter driveways, they may not be able to get 2 back to back, they can still get 2 cars in the driveway, plus the 2-car garage.
It's possible to jockey around. I lived in a duplex when I was in college, and we did that. We'd park at the very end of the driveway and close to the garage, and you could pull around in the driveway pretty easy. But,
This is-
the driveway has to be long enough to be able to do that.
This is 12 units. Each of the 12 units has width for 2 cars in their driveway.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
They're all 2-car garages.
I don't see, with just 12 units here, I really don't see this as a big issue as far as additional traffic or causing problems coming out
It
onto
goes
20th
straight out
Street.
to 20th Street. And it's far enough away from the intersection that it shouldn't be affected by any widening of the street later for left turn lanes. It's quite a little ways from the intersection, probably more than the 300 feet that would require. I really don't see a problem with traffic on it.
Anything else? Okay, our options here are to recommend approval of the rezoning request to the city commission, to recommend denial of the zoning request, or to table the issue for additional information. Would somebody like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the proposed rezoning of Lot A, West Glen preliminary plat from R16 High Density Single Family Residential District to planned unit development with no extra conditions.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by raising the right hand. Opposed? It's unanimous. That is all we have on the agenda. Does the staff have anything else for us tonight?
We don't have anything else. I don't think we have any applications for November so far, but we will keep you updated on working through the IMAC property, and we'll get that back to y'all as soon as we can get some more options from the developer.
Great.
I don't know if the rest of you know, but they may decide to try for a variance instead of rezoning that property. And in a variance, then they wouldn't have to provide extra parking. So that may be the way they'll end up going. And I have a little news. I don't know if all of you remember the little bakery on 5th Street that we approved the rezoning of. I talked to them today. They're gonna open in just a few days.
Okay, finally, finally.
They showed me all around. It's beautiful inside, all
Good.
new and clean.
Good.
And brand new appliances. It looks really nice. They're excited.
Good. Okay, anything else?
Oh, there was someplace I was gonna ask about no, I can't think of it.
Well, give us a call if
This property, I was interested in what was happening on it, but I can't remember where it's at now, so.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Good one.
Oh, yeah, they'll do Lawrence, they'll put a light in, I presume. Is the city anticipating all the extra traffic down to Warren from